Hi, it's Nicole with Simple Stories, and today I'm working with the Classic Pooh Birthday collection. I am also going to be using this free sketch from Sketch Support. This is one I've used a couple times. It's kind of a go-to favorite of mine when I want to intentionally have a large photo, or not a large photo, a large title, and have that title kind of take up a lot of the embellishing, if that makes sense. Now, I do want to mention I print my photos at home, and this is kind of one of the reasons why is I've printed these too big. I'm gonna figure that out here in a minute. And the nice thing about printing at home is I can just go back over to Photoshop elements, resize and reprint and kind of keep going. I do pre-plan a little bit, but sometimes even when I pre-plan, things just kind of either need to be enlarged or, shrunken down a little bit. So printing at home just kind of helps with that. So even though this is a single page layout, I'm still going to be able to get 6 decent size photos on here. And that's something that I really look for when I'm doing kind of like hunting for sketches. Now, as I flip through the photos, I want to kind of talk about my plan for the layout. When I first saw this collection, I loved it. I absolutely loved the original Classic Pooh. I did a spring photo session with my kids. As I was looking through this, I was kind of itching to give myself a little bit of a challenge and see, could I make a birthday layout focusing on all of the patterns, all of the details that don't have a character element on them, as a way to kind of show the versatility of these lines that either have like Classic Pooh or Steamboat Willie, that kind of a thing. I think what makes these collections so fun is the fact that you can either really, really focus on the character details, or you can kind of intentionally dig a little deeper within the collections and kind of really stretch those products. And then even within those, some of these reverse sides have like balloons, streamers, all kinds of stuff. For my personal selection, as far as the pattern papers went, is I kind of lean into the topic of my layout. I think if this had been, say, birthday photos of myself or my kids, I probably would have used the pattern that had the balloons or even the ones with the streamers. The photos are from my husband's birthday, and to me, he's way more reserved than the rest of us. So to me, it made sense to kind of intentionally pick those patterns that are just a little bit more reserved, a little bit more simple. So just kind of going through and looking at a couple things here and there. And then here I have reprinted my photos, and I feel like this gave me just the right amount of space to really bring in those foam titles that I wanted to use and have those foam titles, make up that big prominent place on the layout. So I'm going to go ahead, get my paper trimmed down and adhered to my layout. I've mentioned this at the beginning. This is a sketch that I have used a couple of times, and it just is such a good one for, like I said, big titles, typography. I've done ones where you can die cut with alphabet dies, alphabet stickers, in this case, pre-made foam titles. So many good options. And so I'm just using a ruler here to figure out the size that I need to cut these down to. And then what I'm gonna do is use that diagonal stripe, which the fact that those stripes are in kind of a rainbow order just made my heart so happy. I'm gonna cut that into kind of like a border between these two patterns. So like I said, the reason that I picked these two was that they are the more simpler B-sides. They're a little bit more reserved, a little bit more quiet, and to me that just kind of represented the topic of my photos a little bit more in line than some of the more busy patterns that I probably would have used if it was, like I said, myself or my kids or probably even the dog. So I'm going to check my sizing here, make sure that that strip of photos is going to fit. And I did kind of intentionally keep the 2 photos of my husband with his gifts over on the right side with the big dynamic title. And then I just had like a couple other photos to include on the left in a photo strip. And this was basically, I think, the first time my kids had tried like spicy chicken wings. And then later on, we were playing board games, and I think in this instance, my kids had moved on to playing Scrabble. So once I've got my paper down, kind of figured out placement, I'm going to go back to the papers and see if there's anything that I can kind of cut off to use for layering pieces behind the photos. And I really liked this bingo card. There's no characters on this one, so I'm going to use that, and then kind of just taking a peek through some more stuff. I think at this point I'm looking for the tags, which the tags work like a combination cut apart on this one that has 3x4s, 4x4s, 2x2s, and then tags all across the bottom. And then I did a quick look through on the back of the die cut packs, kind of just trying to see which one had like a good mix of stuff that didn't have Pooh on it. Pooh on this one is so cute. I cannot wait to come back to this collection and do the opposite, and instead of ignoring him, I want to focus on him. I think he is just cute. As a kid, he was my favorite. I had the classic books and sweatshirts and all kinds of stuff. So found a couple tags to go ahead and cut out. The images are going to get covered up, I think, on most of these, but I really like the addition of that kind of tag topper look. It's also a way to bring in some different kind of colors and layers behind the photos and just kind of give them a little bit more grounding, a little bit more interest. I do like to poke holes in my tags. I don't have the right size hole punch, but this really old, I think it's a crocodile, something like that. I just use what I have, it's fine. So once I've kind of figured out a couple decisions, I'm going to start gluing stuff down. I don't love constantly moving things around on my layouts, so once I make decisions, I start attaching so that there's less product for me to kind of bump into. I feel like making decisions between product is the lengthy process for me. And my answer when people ask me, like, how do you pick pattern paper? How do you pick this? My answer is usually I don't know, only to say I like what I like, and sometimes that changes from like the first flip through of product to the 5th flip through of product. Sometimes something will catch my eye later, sometimes something catches my eye at the beginning. I don't have like a good rhyme to my reason. I just kind of hit record and show you guys how I got from point A to point B and try to kind of talk you through how I personally got from point A to point B, and hope that you guys can pick up some tips and some tricks and some inspiration along the way. So at this point, I am going back to those die cut packs. This one, I believe, is the regular bits and pieces. This is like my favorite die cut pack out of, I think, all of their collections. It typically has a good mix of wordy bits, icons, and then a lot of stuff that is tiny, and then small, medium, large, really big. So that's usually the one, like if I'm shopping, I will almost always get the bits and pieces, and then I become a little bit more selective after that, but I feel like the bits and pieces is just like the really good go-to set. And what I ended up doing off camera, and I used my scoreboard to hold everything at this point, was I went through the whole die cut pack, and anything that had characters, people, anything Pooh specific, I kept it in the package, and then everything else I just laid out on that scoreboard and used it to kind of select things from. From there, I'm going to go ahead and just start adhering stuff to my layout. I really liked the little chat bubbles from the foam stickers, and I wanted to kind of build out on this title area. I wanted to have something kind of above it and below it that was smaller. This is just something that I like to do. So I went to the sticker sheet, looked through the phrases, and really I went off of color. It doesn't need to read cohesively from top to bottom for me. I kind of look at typography and like word stuff as like a fun visual element as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to read grammatically correct for me personally to enjoy it. I love including the phrases in instances like this. I feel like they just nestle really well with the title pieces. I feel like this is a way that you can kind of bring in some color and kind of fill in some spaces. I really wanted to use these foam streamers, but I don't know, once I kind of started testing them out, I felt like maybe not. And this is kind of the point in a layout where I've used all of the things that were a for sure yes to me the first time I kind of flipped through. So this is when I start going back and forth between all of the different embellishments and trying to find things to continue to fill in until I feel like overall the layout is balanced as far as embellishing goes. And that's just kind of my personal style, my personal preference. And then I did go and get a bunch of the hearts from the die cut pack as well as the foam stickers and used those to kind of bring in some color and again fill in that kind of wordy title area. And I'm gonna go ahead and pretty sure I used the enamel dots on this one. Again, these little foam hearts, they're so cute. I feel like I probably could have used all of them on this, but I did save some so that I had them the next time I use this. Here's those enamel dots. I like to just kind of bring them in, add them to the other embellishments. Basically just kind of what I feel like looks good to my eye. I know a lot of people do like clusters of 3 or they'll have different colors, all the same color. I think enamel dots are very much a personal preference. Now, this is the journal strip hack that I've been doing for a couple years. This is a Hero Arts sentiment strip die. I do have a Google Doc and a Google Sheet template that you can download, which is on the tutorial video that I have for this, which I will go ahead and link to in the description and then in the eye above here. And it is really good for like if you're doing a bunch of journaling at once. And then sometimes I will just print my journaling on like a scrap piece of cardstock and go ahead and run it through that die. It just makes it super easy. And then I like to put foam adhesive behind mine to kind of give them a little bit of dimension. I also, if I'm not going to do foam adhesive, I like to stack like more layers of the strips so that it becomes kind of like a chipboard piece. Now, I realized when I went to go put that first journaling strip on that I don't have enough space down here, so I went ahead and peeled up the enamel dots and the hearts, and I just set them aside for the moment. I'm going to go ahead and put all of the journaling strips down, and then I can bring those hearts and the enamel dots back in when I can kind of see what space is open to kind of nestle those in. I kind of knew when I was putting them down the first time that I was probably going to have to move them. A lot of times I try to be light-handed when I'm putting things like that on my layout until I'm done, and then I'll kind of burnish everything really good. I am somebody that if I can peel it up and move it, I probably will. Anything over a photo, I'm probably not going to be able to move it, especially like I said, because I print at home and those photos tend to be a little bit like stickier, but it kind of just depends on the adhesive that you're using. So I'm gonna go ahead and put those hearts back, and I'm gonna fight with this enamel dot for a second because I couldn't figure out where it should go. I don't know why enamel dots are just so hard sometimes to figure out where they need to go. But yeah, that is my completed layout. Again, this is one of my favorite sketches, so I kind of use it a lot. If you liked this, give me a thumbs up. Leave me any questions you have down in the comments below. I would love for you to subscribe if you have not, and check out some of these other suggested videos. And I will catch you guys next time. Bye!